Hey everybody, and Tony here with a review of Gaetano Donizetti's Don Pasquale, which was live from the Royal Opera House and which I saw at the UCI Kinovelt. The conductor was Evelino Pido. The production was done by Damiano Micheletto. The assistant director was Gilles Rico. The sets were done by Paolo Fantin. The costumes were done by Agostino Cavalca. The lights were handled by Alessandro Carletti. The videos were done by Rocafilm, and the chorus master was William Spalding. Don Pasquale has been an opera that I have been admiring ever since I was a young boy. I mainly knew this opera through its overture, the duet between Don Pasquale and Malatesta, Chetti Chetti, Ernesto's grand aria, Povero Ernesto, and of course, Norina's Quel guardo il cavaliere, which then leads to the main aria, Sonchiò la virtù magica, a very popular concert staple for many lyric or lyric color to a soprano. Interestingly enough, Donizetti wrote Don Pasquale in the span of 11 days, and during its premiere, it starred the likes of Luigi Lablacche as the titular hero and Giulia Grisi as Norina. The basic plot to this opera goes like this. Don Pasquale is in love with Norina, who is a young widow, but his nephew Ernesto loves her so deeply. He cannot believe that Ernesto has chosen Norina to be his wife and ideal partner rather than accepting his inheritance. All of this comes to play when Dr. Malatesta disguises Norina as his sister Sofronia. Come the day of their wedding, when Don Pasquale and Norina, disguised as Sofronia, get married, and everything in Don Pasquale's life turns upside down. Norina, disguised as Sofronia, spends a lot of Don Pasquale's money, and of course the money in general, on clothes, niceties, and many other things such as fashion. It all comes to a head when it's all revealed that this was all a ruse to get back on Don Pasquale, and the opera nonetheless ends happily with Don Pasquale forgiving Malatesta, Ernesto, and Norina, and the young couple living happily ever after. I was rather apprehensive when going into this particular production of Don Pasquale because even though Brintervel made his role debut in the eponymous hero and Marcus Verba sang the role of Malatesta, and if you know me and my thoughts on Marcus Verba, he does have a rather decent singing voice, and I did hear him in roles such as Papageno when he sang that at the Metropolitan Opera House. And topping it all off, this was the first time I was going to hear Joan Hotea sing the role of Ernesto. My main reason of apprehension was Olga Peretiatko singing Norina, and I'll gladly talk about the singers much later in this review, but first, my thoughts on the production. The first two acts are rather darkly lit and extremely minimalistic. We get a visualization of what Don Pasquale's house looks like as everything is transported from the mid-19th century Italy to the Italy or some other world that we have today. Everyone is in modern clothing, especially considering that instead of notes being passed around, we see text messages through a smartphone. And of course, there are some filmed sequences, especially considering that instead of having Norina sing her showpiece aria within the confines of her room, she sings it in a photo studio where she is helping out a photographer get the shots of a couple, which kind of ruined the effect that Sonchiù la virtù magica is basically a soliloquy in aria form, because it does show what Norina is truly thinking and what she can do in order to make all of these plans come into motion. We even get to see Don Pasquale and his supposed ideal future of a wife and having kids, which probably makes him have a little bit more humanity in terms of his characterization, as it does seem to shed some light on him. And after the first two acts are over, we then move on to Act 3, where Norina practically turns everything upside down and everything is white, and we even get to see some really cute puppetry, which was pretty much the highlight of this particular production. And let's also not forget about the usage of green screen, which made a lot of things rather visually fun. And the costumes looked really nice on all the singers. And even the fact that we get to see Don Pasquale having his hair dyed by his old carer, from the platinum whiteness of his hair to ivory blackness, which I thought was a very interesting touch. So overall, I do have some really mixed feelings with Damiano Micheletto's production of Don Pasquale. It kind of lacked that luxury that I would usually associate in a lot of traditional productions of Don Pasquale. It lacked a lot more scenery and vibrance, and it just kind of left me indifferent about the whole thing. There were some interesting and fun concepts, especially with the puppets, and I did like the whole video effects, which managed to make things a little bit more vibrant and a little bit more enjoyable. But as for the production as a whole, I felt like everything was a mixed bag. Now we get to the singers, starting off with Bryn Tervel as Don Pasquale. Throughout the years, many a bass baritone, and baritone have been singing this particular elderly gentleman. Considering how iconic this buffo part is, there has been no shortage of bassos and bass baritones who have specialized in this particular role. Many a Don Pasquale would even go out of their way to sing the likes of Dr. Bartolo from both Barber of Seville and Marriage of Figaro, Don Basilio also from Barber of Seville, Don Magnifico from La Cenerentola, the Governor from Le Comptoir, Don Prudencio from Il Viaggio a Reims, Falstaff from Verdi's Falstaff, and even to some extent Hagen from Götterdämmerung if the Don Pasquale were to be a true basso. Suffice to say, what one needs in Don Pasquale is the deep, rich tones of a Hagen, the lovable oafishness of Dr. Bartolo, and of course such really fine bel canto singing found in roles such as Don Basilio, Don Magnifico, and Dulcamara. And I thought that Bryn Tervel gave a fine role debut as this particular elderly gentleman. Sure, what I do notice about his voice is that it did have some semblances of a wobble and a tremolo here and there. But if I were to look beyond those pitfalls, I still have to give Bryn Tervel credit for being such a fine and absolutely involved singing actor. He was able to use his signature hamminess to bring this particular character to life, and I can definitely tell that he had a lot of fun embodying Don Pasquale with everything that he was. I can never overlook the fact that I have at my disposal a lot of favorite Don Pasquales, such as Salvatore Baccaloni, Melchiorre Luise, Paolo Montarsolo, Fernando Corena, who is my most personal favorite, and even Evgeny Nesterenko. However, if you were to ask me, as I stated before, Fernando Corena is my most favorite because of the fact that he was able to master the art of patter singing as well as combine the fine coloratura that he needs in this role with some deep, rich, virile tones. With Bryn Tervel's patter singing, I thought it sounded rather effortful and he seemed to be kind of out of breath. But regardless of all that, his stage presence and his overall acting chops managed to make him still as fun and hypnotic as ever. And even though I do have some rather mixed feelings about his voice, like the occasional woofiness that he has, he also have some moments where he was able to sing rather well in the lower register and even in the middle range, he was still dedicated as a singing actor in his own special way. So I still have to give him a major pat on the back for it, even though there have been so many other richer voices who have sung Don Pasquale and maybe who I would have preferred to sing the titular hero. Marcus Verba was a rather solid Malatesta. Now with this particular role, as opposed to Don Pasquale's more deep, rich, and voluminous basso voice, Malatesta essentially needs a lean, full, rich, and rather virile baritone voice. Any singer who has done Malatesta has also done the likes of Papageno from Zauberflöte, Guglielmo from Cose fan tutte, Marullo from Rigoletto, Il Conte di Luna from Trovatore, Ford from Falstaff, Iago from Otello, Chonal from La Bohème, Sharpless from Madame Butterfly, and even Correb from Le Toyon. You essentially need a baritone who can sing lyrically, yet combine all of those fine and rich, virile, dramatic tendencies that can make any baritone great. And I thought that Marcus Verba did a serviceable job singing the role of Il Dottore Malatesta. He does have a nice, clean, and fine tone, which is nevertheless gorgeous to listen to. However, he did cave into singing in The Mask in several moments, which is kind of a shame because if he were to sing more in the pharynx, his voice would have been a lot richer, a lot fuller, and probably would have filled out the house a lot more. And I could also see just how much he was able to enjoy embodying Malatesta with everything that he was. He was able to embody this character with a lot of charisma, charm, and something rather hypnotic about him that made me enjoy his overall characterization. Yes, at my disposal, I do have a lot of favorite Malatestas of the past, including the likes of Enzo Sordello, the late great Rolando Panerai, Alan Titus, and even both Gino and Louis Quilico, because those gentlemen had far more developed and richer voices, which managed to sound virile and absolutely charming to listen to. With Marcus Verba, I thought he was actually the best out of all the cast members, considering how much he was able to discipline himself as a singing actor and also how much he was able to give as Malatesta. Then we have Ioan Hotea as Ernesto. Ernesto needs a light lyric tenor and is just as coveted as the likes of Almaviva from Il Barbiere di Siviglia, Le Comptory from Le Comptory, Cavalier Belfiore from Il Viaggio en Reims, Fenton from both Falstaff and Die lustigen Weiber von Windsor, Rôle de Nangy from Les Huguenots, Hoffmann from Le Comte Hoffmann, Elvino from La Sonnambula, Arturo from I Puritani, Tebaldo from I Capuletti e Montecchi, the Duke from Rigoletto, Alfredo from La Traviata, and even Corrado from Il Corsaro. What one needs in this particular role is a lot of graceful, gorgeous, clean, and clear singing for many a true light lyric tenor. And many a light lyric tenor who have sung Ernesto have also went out of their way to sing the likes of Almaviva, Le Comptory, Pedrillo, Belmonte, Ferrando from Così fan tutte, Tamino, and many other great roles for a light lyric tenor. I thought that Ioan Hotea was rather okay in this role. Okay because he does have potential to grow as a singer. As I heard his voice, it felt like he sang everything in The Mask, and he did give into some crooning, which should not be the case for any true light lyric tenor. Nevertheless, he did attack the high notes rather well with everything he's got, and he did have an endearing stage presence to bring the role of Ernesto to life. He is someone who does have enough charm and charisma to stand on his own 2 feet, and I'm sure that if he listens to the likes of Tito Schippa, Ferruccio Tagliavini, and even Jerry Hadley, I'm sure that he will have a great idea as to how their voices sound like, how they open their mouths, how they let their voices be released, and many other things that should make a true light lyric tenor. So if Ioan Hotea just eliminates all the mask singing and focus everything on the pharynx while developing those chest tones and developing his overall core, I'm pretty sure that he can be a much better lyric tenor. As he did show potential, but I really hope that he doesn't squander it nor give into bad habits, because there is a voice right there that should be able to sing a lot better than it did, and with much more core development, much more perseverance in terms of the dedication he has to his craft, and of course, really getting that pharynx more activated and eliminating all that mask singing. I am pretty sure that Joan Hotea can reach international heights. Unfortunately, Olga Peretiatko was the weak link to the overall cast. But before I get to her, a few words about Norina. Many a light lyric and lyric coloratura soprano have been singing this particular heroine. And for that, it is no surprise that her showpiece aria, starting off with Quel guardo il cavaliere, which then leads to the main aria, So Anch'io la virtù magica, has become a very popular concert staple. Many singers who have sung Norina have also went out of their way to sing the likes of Lucia della Mermur, Corina from Il Viaggio a Rams, Adina from L'Elixir d'Amore, Marie from La Fille d'Orangement, both Constanza and Blanchen from Die Entführung aus dem Serail, Pamina from Die Zauberflöte, Frau Flut from Die lustigen Weiber von Windsor, Marguerite de Valois from Les Huguenots, Antonia from Le Comte of Man, Gilda from Rigoletto, Violetta Valerie from La Traviata, Medora from Il Corsaro, and even the likes of Zdenka from Arabella and Adele from the Fledermaus. This role has indubitably attracted many a soprano because of the personality that she has, which is vivacious, feisty, and very crafty in terms of what she implies in her showpiece aria, and many of them were happy enough to have included Norina in their respective repertoires. To say that I have a very interesting history with Olga Peretiatko is a bit of an understatement. Back then when I was a teenager of 15, I used to really like her because she did have a pretty good voice and a technique that showed a lot of potential. And as I reached my late teens, I thought that she was rather solid and continued to show a lot of potential. And nowadays, as an adult, I am not so crazy about her because the coloratura work tends to be very sloppy. And I'm pretty sure that those of you who have tuned into her performance as Lucia live from the Wiener Staatsoper could also testify as to even say how much of a hot mess that was. And even her previous Lucias, considering how much of a hot mess each and every one of them was. And don't get me started in her attempts of singing Anna Bolena. Let's just say that I'm more than happy not to have reviewed that. But because I caught Don Pasquale also starring Olga Peretiatko, I'll give my 2 cents on what I thought of her overall performance. Throughout my life, in terms of following Olga Peretiatko's career, I really wanted to like her so much. She did have very interesting material to work off of, considering her beginnings as a soprano leggero with roles such as the Queen of the Night, Papagena, and even starting out with small roles such as Gianetta from L'Elixir d'Amore and Albina from La Donna del Lago. Nowadays, she's heading to the likes of Adina from L'Elixir d'Amore, Norina, Lucia, Gilda, and many other roles for a lyric coloratura soprano with extremely intermittent results. Just listening to Olga Peretiatko's trills reminds me more of clucking chickens and or gobbling turkeys than chirping nightingales, which is a huge shame because Olga Peretiatko did have a lot of potential to grow as a singer, but the sloppiness of her technique and the overall nasal quality of her voice and even her unclear and very muddled vowels did not really help me appreciate this singer much further. The straw that really breaks the camel's back is that I do not buy her as a credible singing actress. Try as she might in terms of this role, she could not act her way out of a wet paper bag. Nevertheless, if she is able to develop her chest tones a lot more, or even get rid of the nasality of her voice, plus the cluckatura trills, I'm pretty sure that there could be a decent lyric soprano hiding behind Olga Peretyatko. But as she was, I was rather disappointed in her, especially considering her previous performances where her technique did not really develop at all. I could name off the top of my head sopranos who could have, and should have sung the role of Norina in this particular transmission. Voices that come into my mind are the likes of Anna Dorlovsky, Mandy Friedrich, Jessica Pratt, Elena Tsaragova, Yana Shrema-Kachirkova, Yana Sibera, Catherine Lewick, Golda Schultz, Pretty Yenda, Alexandra Hutton, Shaban Stagg, Anna Prohaska, and even what we have been having today with the likes of Alexandra Olshik, Elza Dreisig, Christelle Pertna, Hanan Alatar, Marigona Kerkezi, Serena Saenz, and even Victoria Randem. Those were sopranos that should have ended up singing Norina in the live transmission. With Olga Peretyatko, she may have had some moments where she was able to be brave with her high notes, even though they were high larynx. But when all is said and done, I seriously hope that Olga Peretyatko fixes up her technique ASAP. So overall, the singing was extremely hit or miss. There was some decent singing, mainly to be found in Marcus Verba in terms of how much life he was able to breathe into Malatesta, but there was also some rather disappointing singing found in Olga Peretyatko as Norina. Nevertheless, I still have to give some credit to Bryn Terfel in terms of how he was able to tackle the role of Don Pasquale, and of course for making a serviceable role debut in this particular character. The conducting done by Evelino Pido was really well done. He did keep the orchestra in great shape, and he made sure that everyone went along. And of course, I can never go wrong with either the chorus or orchestra of the Royal Opera House. They were pros through and through, and they deserve a huge salute in terms of how they managed to keep everything together. So overall, this was kind of a disappointing evening for opera, with a production that I had extremely mixed feelings with, coupled with some singing that did not reach up to par, and of course some technical difficulties that happened during the live stream, yet some really fine conducting done by Evelino Pido. This production of Don Pasquale was pretty much a disappointment. I'm very sure that there could have been better singers who could have embodied the roles of Don Pasquale, Malatesta, Ernesto, and Norina. But as it was, I just kind of found myself shaking my head in disappointment and even scratching my head asking to myself if this is what the Royal Opera House thinks is a very acceptable performance. So here's hoping that the people in the Royal Opera House step up their game, because the Royal Opera House is one of the world's finest opera houses, and I do not want to see them sinking into mediocrity. And for those of you who saw this particular production of Donizetti's Don Pasquale live from the Royal Opera House, what'd you think of it? Do you feel like Marcus Verba stole the show as Malatesta? Do you feel that Bryn Terfel gave a rather solid role debut as Don Pasquale? Or did you also feel that Olga Peretyatko was the major disappointment and the overall weak link in this production of Don Pasquale? Comment below and let me know. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune in on Sunday where I review Jules Massenet's Manon live from the Metropolitan Opera House, starring Lisette Oropesa in the title role and Michael Fabiano as De Grieux. So until then, good night, everybody.